Hi, this is Gonzalo, and I am going to be doing the bonus regarding lead generation. The reason why I want to do this bonus is I wanted you to be able to understand the psychology behind why I do the things I do. I'm going to be talking about how I outsource my lead generation in my different businesses. And even though my businesses may not be the same as yours, you're really going to be able to walk away with the principles, the psychology, and the techniques that I use. And once you learn those, you can actually use them for any business that you have. So that's the thing. The techniques are important. The examples I use are important. But once you learn and understand those techniques, you're going to be able to use your own creativity to be able to apply them to your own business. And the biggest thing I'm going to be showing you is how I break down my lead generation into small manageable pieces that then allows you to outsource them. Now, if you think about it, think about how McDonald's operates, right? You have the cash register person, you have the person who makes the French fries, the person who makes hamburgers, and the person who handles inventory, who handles the drive-through. All these pieces are important, and someone in theory could handle them all, but because they break them into small manageable pieces, they're able to hire people who have lower skills and be able to do each specific task compared to hiring one person that can do everything. That's how they're able to maintain profitability. Well, the same thing can be done with lead generation, and I'm going to go ahead and walk you through my process. Now, when I develop my process, one of the things that most people have problems with, including myself in the past, was I always thought you had to have one salesperson that could do everything, right? They can close a sale, they can send over the contracts, they can literally do everything. And once you analyze that process, you discover that your salespeople, right? The person who generates leads, who closes leads, when they do everything, once you analyze their workday, you notice that only about 5 to 10% of their day is actually spent on selling. The rest of the time is spent on administrative work, busy work. Now, the reason I applied this technique and learned this technique, there was a gentleman, and I don't remember his name, but he was a business owner from Australia. And he had a team of 17 salespeople. Now, when he went in and analyzed his sales team, he noticed that his sales team will only spend about 5 to 10% of their time actually selling. So what he did is he fired all his salespeople except the one person who was the best salesperson. And then he removed all the administrative work, all the fulfillment, all the follow through, and gave it to an administrative team. So this new salesperson, all they were actually doing is actually having those critical conversations and closing and having a closing conversation. And then they handed everything else to an administrative assistant. That one person produced the same number of sales as the 17 other people that he had on his staff before. So he went from 17 salespeople to one salesperson. And not only did they do the same volume as the 17 other people, but the next year, she was doing twice the number of sales, which is crazy. So it shows you actually don't need more salespeople. It's actually, you actually need the ability to break down each step of the process, automate it, systemize it so the lowest, skilled person can handle that, and that your salespeople can actually focus on what they do best, which is selling and closing. So I'm actually going to walk you through some examples of that, how I actually did that in my own company. But I want to actually help you understand that you don't necessarily need more people. You need people who are specialized in one and two things so that you can actually pay that skilled person for the skill that you really are hiring them for, not basic administrative work. And you can actually use this for cold calling, for sales meeting, all those critical conversations, and eliminate all the other stuff that they don't need to do. The overview of my lead generation system is broken down in two parts. The first part is the research part. Now, the research part has to deal with, how do you find and identify your potential clients, right? How do you, research them to be able to find the people who are the most likely to buy from you? So that's the first part of the process. And the second phase of the lead generation process is actually client acquisition. Now, what does client acquisition mean? How do you market to them? How do you market to the people who you research and you identify? How do you market to them so that you can convince them to buy from you, to become your customer? And that's the part in next week's module that I will cover in detail of all the techniques and the processes that I use to get those customers. But now I'm going to go ahead and dive into the first phase, which is the research. This is one of the most critical phases of this whole process. Because if you're going after people who are not interested in your product or who are not very likely to buy from you, then no matter what techniques you're using, nothing's going to work. So I'm going to go ahead and cover that now. Now, before I go into my techniques, I want to get you into the psychology or the mindset of these potential clients. So I'm going to share with you two stories. The first one I am going to call the bleeding neck example. Now, if you think about it, when someone walks into the ER room and they have a wound in their neck, they're bleeding from the neck, do you think they're going to go out there and ask the doctor how much is it going to cost for them to get fixed? To perform a procedure to actually stop the bleeding from the neck? Of course they're not. I mean, think about it. You're in there, you're bleeding, you're probably thinking to yourself, I'm going to die. You're not going to say, hey doc, how much is this going to cost me? Well, if you think about it, those are the customers you want to go after. The people who have enough pain that they want to buy from you. Now, how do you identify people who have pain? So let me tell you a story from a gentleman, and this is a story I heard years ago. The name of the gentleman, his name is Dan Kennedy. He's a very well-known salesman. A lot of people, study him. He has a lot of great books. And he shared a story that I heard once, and it really stuck with me. He was working for a company, and before I go into his details, let me make sure I say something. I don't remember the exact company he worked for or the details, the exact details, but I'm going to share you the essence of the story so that you really understand what he was trying to communicate. So if I get any of the details wrong, I'm sorry. So this gentleman, Dan Kennedy, he was working for a company called the Nightingale Corporation. That company was a company that was responsible for selling cassette tapes and courses to business owners, to small business owners. And, the courses were like motivational, how-to stuff, back in the old days, right? 80s and 70s. And so they would actually go door to door to local business owners and would try to talk to them about buying some of these courses, these cassette tapes. So Dan Kennedy started working for this company, and after 6 months, he was barely getting by. He was literally scraping the bottom of the barrel, right? He was destitute. Well, there's a gentleman in his company, and we'll call him John, who was the top salesman of his company. I mean, the guy was, he would win awards every single year. He was amazing. His numbers were through the roof. So Dan wanted to, went up to him and said, hey, John, can you help me and give me some tips to sell? Well, John, really didn't have time for this. He blew him off and said, sorry, Dan, I don't have time to help you, and blew him off. A couple months passed by, and John noticed that Dan was working really hard to try to get some sales. So he kind of took, he felt sorry for him. He said, you know what? This poor guy's starving to death. Let me see if I can, let me help him out. So one day, John approaches Dan and says, Dan, all right, I feel bad for you. I'm going to give you a tip. And I'm going to tell you the main reason why I am the number one sales company, the salesperson for this company. And it's really not that hard, but once you understand this principle, your sales are going to go through the roof. So Dan leaned in. He said, okay, John, tell me. The moment that I walk into the door of a business owner and I go up to his desk, and if I don't see any cassette tapes or any books, any self-help books or cassette tapes or courses, if I notice that he doesn't have any on his desk or any of his bookshelves, I drop my brochure as fast as I can and take off from that office. Now, if I walk into the office of a business owner and I see his desk stacked with self-help books, cassette tapes, motivational stuff, I sit down and I stay there as long as he'll let me. Because if he bought that many, he's going to buy some from me. Now, if I walk into an office that the guy has never bought one cassette tape or anything, guess what? I'm never going to be the first one. So I don't waste my time on people who don't buy. So if you think about it, when you're selling your products and services, you want to sell it to people who have a bleeding neck. You want to sell it to people who have a history of buying from you. That's why the biggest companies in the world buy lists and names of people who have bought in the past. See, here's the thing is, human beings, for the most part, don't change. They do things over and over again. And if you think about it, for example, I'm taking my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law has bought dozens and dozens of diet and health products. Every couple of months, she's buying a new diet book, buying a new program. She's trying the next supplement. And guess what? She does that over and over again. Now, if I was a betting person, what would be the chances that she would buy something in a diet-related field next year? Super high. Now there's people out there who've never bought a diet program. Should we waste our time marketing to those people? And of course, the answer is absolutely not. So that's what I want you to really get into the mindset of, is how, what's the likelihood of that person, of that customer buying from me? So now I'm going to give you some examples of how I do that, how I'm able to identify people who are willing to spend money in my products. Well, really, there's two ways to find potential clients. Now, the easiest one, which I tell people to do first, is to buy a list. So I'm going to give you an example of my business for personal injury attorneys. Now, it's very simple. You can actually go out and, let's say you do a search on Google, and I'm going to pull it up right here, and you'll see personal injury attorney email list. And you're going to notice a couple examples here. The first one is a database, attorney mailing list, DMB database. Right, there's one. And here is their website. And they sell lists of attorneys that are verified law firms around the country, their phone numbers, you name it, right? How much income they make, roughly an estimate. The next company that we have here is another company about personal injury list, and here's their page. And they sell you a price per 1,000, right? And last but not least, I saw an ad here on the right-hand side, reach 80,000 attorneys via email, right? I click on it, and here is a list of 20,000 email addresses for $99. And if I want 50,000, $149, and 70,000 for $199. Now, when I tell people to buy a list before they manually collect it, is pretty much for almost any industry, you're able to find a list, be able to buy a list from list owners, either an email list or a direct mail list or a phone number list. So, think about it. For $199, you get 70,000 contact information for attorneys. Is really, really cheap. So before you manually go out and have your virtual assistant do that for you, first try to see if someone already created the data that you needed. So that's the first way. Now the second way is, if there's no list you can buy, you're going to have your virtual assistant do that for you. Now, there's a couple of things when I'm going to be doing that. I'm going to give this example for personal injury attorneys, is I have them type in the word personal injury attorney, and I have them look at the results. Now, I do not care about the results that are down here that are not ads. And these are regular, like organic search results. What I'm looking for is I'm looking for people who are paying for ads. Now, this is crucial because it tells me that they value a lead. So I have a service that sells lead generation to personal injury attorneys. Now, if I go after people who have a history of getting leads through referrals from their customers, me going out there and convincing them that they should pay for leads is not going to happen. So I will go out there and have my guys collect the information of everyone who advertises with Google, because if they're willing to advertise with Google and pay for a click with Google, they're very likely to pay me to bring them actual phone calls. Now, I have my team use a tool called Watopia. Watopia allows my Filipino workers to change their IP address, also known as the address or the way that Google sees you, like where you're surfing their website from, allows you to change it to pick from almost any city around the world. So if my Filipino worker does a search for personal injury attorney in the Philippines, they're going to get only results for the Philippines. Well, really, that doesn't do me any good. I want results for like Texas and Miami. So I have this tool, Watopia, which costs like, $5, $6 a month. And they change their IP address to make it look like they're surfing from the US or any part of the world. And now when they do a search for personal injury attorney, they can seem like they're searching from within Miami. And now the results for the ads are for Miami. And that's how I'm able to have them pull the data for all the advertisements that they have for those cities. Now, let me tell you why it's so important to go after people who are advertising with Google. So here's the company right here that I'm pointing to, that they're the #1 search result in Google for the word personal injury attorney. And I'm searching from Miami. Now, there's two tools that I use that are free. You can pay for, extra services, but the basic version is fine. And I type in their domain there. This tool is called simrush.com. When I type that in there, it tells me this little column here for ads traffic price, that this website spends roughly about $27,000 a month with Google to advertise with them. If I scroll further down, it gives me some prices that they're paying for keywords. So for example, the word auto accident attorney Miami, they're giving Google $175 just to get a click. The other tool I use is spyfood.com. And they also give me similar numbers. They tell me here that this website spends roughly about $2,300 to $5,200 on a daily basis with Google for ads. And that's a lot of money. And also right here on the right-hand side, under paid keywords, it gives me a rough idea of how much they're paying for keywords. So $52 here, $112 here, $95 here. So if you're going to contact this company and you say, hey, listen, I know that you're spending between $27,000 to roughly $100,000 a month with Google to get clicks, I can do the same thing for you and get your phone ringing off the hook or get visitors, to you, and it won't cost you that much. Now, do you feel that this customer is more likely to listen to you? Of course they would. I mean, if I had a credit card bill every month between $27,000 to $100,000 a month in advertising to Google, if someone calls me and tells me they can get similar or better results than Google, I'm at least going to listen to them. So this is, my technique I share about people who have a history of buying what you're selling. These are people who value a lead. because they're willing to pay for it. This is the customer who has the bleeding neck. So I have my Filipinos go out there and research all these clients, all these ads, and you can do the same thing with Bing.com or Yahoo advertisement and see every business who's paying for leads. Now they're willing to pay for leads. Of course, it's going to be an easy conversation. So that, takes care of the research phase. So you can either buy a list, or then you can actually have your VA search for people who have a history of buying or paying for what you're selling, right? There's no point of going after people who never have bought a lead and who've never bought your product. Now you can do this, this research phase is really going to tell you a lot about these companies. It's also going to tell you, like SEMrush or SpyFu will tell you other companies that buy those keywords. So if you pay for their more advanced features, you can actually get the list of every domain who's buying those keywords from. And for example, SpyFu, if I scroll down, it shows me all their different websites, how much they spend on a monthly basis. So for example, South Florida Injury Law spends $84,000 a month with Google to advertise and get these potential clients to them. So I hope that helped you. That's exactly how I do my research phase. And next week, I'm going to be covering in detail, once you've done that research, how to go after these companies and how to market to them so they actually choose you to do business with them.